You got to wait for a gapper.
That is fair down the right field line. Giambi on his way to third. And they're going to wave him around. The throw misses a cutoff man. Shot into the plate. Out of the plate. Derek Jeter with one of the most unbelievable plays you will ever see by a shortstop.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Our studio's right here in Hamilton, Ohio, the hometown of one of our all-time favorites, Joe Nuxall, one of the all-time greats. Welcome to our program Off the Bench, presented by UDF. I'm Thom Brennaman. Great to have you with us on this Wednesday. Now, we invite you to join us every single day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 Eastern. You can go to YouTube, type in Chatterbox Sports. Please subscribe to the program. We hope you like it. And when I say subscribe, a lot of people think that means you have to spend money. You don't. It's absolutely free of charge. I got my UDF water going here. All right. You can also find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We come to you in that form, Apple, Google, wherever. We love to have your input, your thoughts on the program. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Thom Brennaman TV, as in television, okay? So coming up in about 15 minutes, every Wednesday here on the show, we're calling it The Big Interview, where we try to find somebody who is a big name in the world of sports. And this guy is as big a name and as big a man as there is in the world of sports. The big fella himself, Hall of Fame offensive tackle Anthony Munoz. We'll talk about growing up in Ontario, California. We will talk about getting injured his senior year at USC in the season opener, and he came back to play in the Rose Bowl against undefeated Ohio State when he could have taken a medical red shirt. It's really an amazing story. Some of you may remember he had some injuries at USC, but this one is really interesting to break down and get his thoughts. We'll also talk with him about the Bengals. We'll talk about Jonah Williams as the Bengals are set to open their season this Sunday at home. Paycor Stadium, they call it now, not Paul Brown Stadium anymore. But it's week one, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are in town. And a few days ago, the Steelers named Ohio native Mitchell Trubisky as a team captain, but they had not yet named him their starting quarterback. Well, that changed yesterday. He will start on Sunday. Now, some of you may remember Trubisky, who grew up in Mentor, Ohio, was the second overall pick in the draft by the Chicago Bears in 2017. He was drafted ahead of Deshaun Watson and ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Trubisky had started 1 year at North Carolina, one season. Watson had been a 2 or 3 year starter at Clemson, and we'll talk more about this topic, about quarterbacks, drafting them, guys that only have 1 year as a starter as opposed to guys who have 2 or 3 years as a starter, which Mahomes did as well. Now, in his second year, Trubisky led the Bears to a divisional championship and to the playoffs, and he went to the Pro Bowl. So it didn't look like a bad pick. I mean, he wasn't Watson. He wasn't Mahomes, certainly. But you get a Pro Bowl quarterback, and those are few and far between in the history of the Bears, and they win the division and they go in the playoffs. But after that, straight downhill in a hurry. Okay? And they ran him off. But let me tell you now, do not sleep on Mitchell Trubisky if you're a Bengals fan thinking this guy's a stiff. Okay? I know everything I just said about him, and he lost his job in Chicago, and there are people in Chicago that will tell you that he is a bust as the second overall pick in the draft, which, if he's not with your team after 4 years, might be accurate. But I had a chance to call a number of Chicago Bears games when Trubisky was there. He is more than capable of having a monster game. He can run. He can throw. He's a talented dude. I saw a game where he threw 5 touchdowns against Tampa Bay. There was a Thanksgiving game against Detroit where he threw for 350 yards and all that kind of thing. So he's not like some guy that every game he's scuffling and, and not playing well. Okay, last year, the Bears let him go. He wound up backing up Josh Allen in Buffalo. Now he goes to Pittsburgh. He beats out the rookie out of Pitt, Kenny Pickett, for the Steelers' starting job, and we will see him on Sunday here in Cincinnati. One more note, by the way, on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They announced yesterday that the number 32, that of former great Franco Harris, will officially be retired later this season. And for those of us who are old enough to remember, and I am one of them, this is the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception by Franco Harris. Can you believe it's been 50 years since that play? If you're younger and you've never seen it before, it's one of the most truly amazing plays in the history of sports. Playoff game against then the Oakland Raiders, and down to the last second, it's almost like a Hail Mary, but it's even more bizarre than that. You got to check it out. Did you see what the New England Patriots did yesterday? Did you catch this? In a rare break from the norm, head coach Bill Belichick and his team took off out of Boston and arrived in South Florida 5 days before their season opener against the Miami Dolphins. The Patriots are 2-7 in their last 9 against Miami, and apparently the last couple of years when they've had to go down there early in the year, their players had a really hard time adjusting to that heat. And, here we are in September, and in South Florida, they're saying kickoff on Sunday is going to be somewhere around 95 degrees. You know about the humidity, the whole 9 yards. So Bill Belichick says, let's try something different. The key part of this whole thing is not only that the Patriots, the model franchise in the NFL, without a doubt. Them, the Steelers, a couple of others. It's not only that Belichick is willing to try something different, even at his age, very routine, borderline OCD kind of guy, right? And all the success and all the Super Bowls. You have to have an owner who goes along with that program. Because you're talking about traveling 50-some-odd players, right? You're talking about the staff, coaching staff, training staff, equipment staff, all kinds of people that instead of just spending one night in a hotel, which is norm for NFL teams, okay, you fly down the day before, you play the game the next day, one night in a hotel, you're out. But Robert Kraft, and I don't care if you like the guy or don't like the guy, he's a great owner. And when Belichick runs this idea about him, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, for all that staff, all those players, all those coaches, additional expenses in hotel rooms, no problem. Let's go get them. A couple of notes in the world of college football, or a note really. The AP did not release a preseason top 25 this year. They wait until after week 1. And so the AP poll comes out after everybody played week 1. No surprise. Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Michigan 4, Clemson 5. We gave out our top 5 yesterday. We flip-flopped Georgia and Ohio State, but after watching what Georgia did to Oregon, we said it yesterday, we totally understand why you'd put them number 2. All right. This last story is not getting a lot of pub, but believe me when I tell you, the pillars of Major League Baseball's offices on Park Avenue in New York City are shaking in fear on this one. I can't express that to you enough. Minor League Baseball players are unionizing, and they are joining the Major League Baseball Players Association. Now, Major League Baseball has already paid minor leaguers $185 million in a class action suit. That was earlier this year. You've got the Senate Judiciary Committee sniffing around on baseball's antitrust exemption. This is a huge story with major ramifications. Stay tuned. But most importantly, coming up, our main man, one of our all-time favorites, not just as a player. He was a great player. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But I'm talking about as a man, a Christian, a father, a human being. That's Anthony Munoz. The big interview with the big fellas coming up next, right here on Off the Bench.
I know one thing. Ain't nobody does this better than us. Facts.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench presented by UDF. Michael Anthony Munoz was born in Ontario, California in August of 1958, just celebrated a birthday. And like a lot of you, remembering and living here in Cincinnati when he was drafted by the Bengals, he had the hair going. He had it all going. And he comes out of USC. He played football. He played baseball, believe it or not. We'll get to that in a second. And at USC, he won all 4 of his bowl games, including 3 Rose Bowls. Lots to talk about with one of our all-time favorite people, Anthony Munoz, kind enough to join us. How are you, big fella? You look great, tan, fit, lean, and mean.
Thom Brennaman, great seeing you, buddy. I feel good. I just had a birthday, and I'm just thankful to get up in the morning and move around.
How's your body feel, Anthony? You and I work together, and you've taken great care of yourself. You lost a lot of that weight you carried around when you were playing in the NFL. How does your body feel now? Because you hear all the stories about guys that aren't doing so well. How about you?
Thom, I'm very thankful, and I think you bring up a great key. I've been retired 30 years now, and I still work out every day. I think it's a matter of continuing to move, and I'm not a fanatic with what I eat, but I watch what I eat, and then just lifestyle. It's one of those things where as a lineman I was always pretty flexible, so I always try to stretch every day. I think that's a key, but you can hear me coming down the hall sometimes, and sometimes you can't. So it just depends. what's moving in the right direction when I wake up. But I would say I'm very thankful. Really, the only thing in the 30 years that I've had go wrong is my right shoulder. I've had that reattached a couple times being a little crazy with things, but that was playing days. I had it reattached twice when I was playing. But for the most part, Thom, I'm thankful. Didi and I talk about it that I can get, I usually go hour and a half in the morning and I can play 18 holes of golf. And at nighttime, I'm not really sore. I feel really good. Tired, of course, but feel pretty good. So, as long as I can keep doing that and feel good, I'm going to keep doing it. But I'm thankful for all the years I did what I did, that I feel as good as I do.
It's got to be painful for you, Anthony, though, to see and talk to and watch, whether it be up close or from afar, some of the players that aren't as blessed with good health, whether that's physically, whether that's mentally. I mean, some of these stories are just devastating of guys that did what you did for a long, long time.
They are, and I hate to see it, and it's going to happen, and it happens, and man, I tell you what, it really breaks my heart. Guys that you played with, you watched play before you got in the league, and you watched after you left the league. I can just start out down the line. I mean, a guy that we played the same amount of time, came in 80, finished 13 years. He was a right tackle for the Steelers. I was a left tackle for the Bengals. And he just passed last year of Lou Gehrig's disease, at my age, Tunchilkin.
Yeah.
And then you have Steve McMichael up in Chicago who's going through this. Ricky Dixon, who was quite a few years younger than me that I played with in Cincinnati, passed away. So you see you see the dementia, the Alzheimer's, and then, of course, the physical stuff. That's pretty much a given with most guys that we're going to go through the joint replacements and the joint, arthritis. But the thing that really, really just, besides the physical part, is the mental part. When you see guys that are still pretty much there physically, but all of a sudden mentally they're not there, and that's really what makes me sad.
I want to go back to when you were growing up in Ontario, California. You clearly had a family that steered Anthony Munoz and your siblings in the right direction. What was life like in the Munoz house when you were a kid growing up?
Well, it was a little bit of survival mode, a little bit of chaos. My mom raised 5 by herself. I had 2 older brothers and I had 2 younger sisters. I was right in the middle. I lost a brother that was 2 years older than me last year. So I still have my oldest brother who's 8 years older than me. I lost a sister that was just below me by a little over a year, 2 years ago. And then I still have my youngest sister who is 5 years younger. So the youngest, the oldest, in the middle still. We lost mom 6 years ago. But it was one of those things, Thom, we didn't have a whole lot. We never had a car, never had a lot of the material things. She worked 2-3 jobs to provide for us. But we knew there was support and there was love. For me, athletics was very important at a young age. But we also knew that mom was the boss. So during the school year, if I wanted to go out and play baseball, which we did in Southern California basically year-round, get my homework done. During the summer, if I wanted to show up at the park 7, 8 in the morning, throw out the bases and play baseball, we had to get our chores done. And I wasn't just like taking the trash out, Thom. It was mom taught us how to cook, how to wash clothes in the washing machine, how to hang them up, how to iron, how to sew, how to clean house. So 5 kids, we had to do all that for each other because she was gone 6 in the morning working every single day. So she taught us work ethic, responsibility, and there was a lot of support, not only from mom, but uncles, coaches, teachers. So, and all families aren't exempt from, the kids going in, wrong direction at times. And I'm just thankful that for me, I had those examples that I didn't really go off the rails crazy. Of course, I just got a job and I interviewed and they did a background check and I said, if you go after my freshman year in college, I'm okay. Don't background check. But so that's how it was growing up. I knew that hopefully athletics was going to get me out of that environment, allow me to provide for my family. Got to high school and football, basketball, and baseball. So when you talk about the Munoz household, very supportive in everything we did. Even though we didn't have a car, mom was at all our events, all our baseball games, all our all our events. She found a way to be there.
That is just amazing when you think about the way your kids have grown up, my kids have grown up, the way so many kids are growing up today. And we're going to circle back to that a little bit later on as it pertains to your foundation that you started in 2002. When you are in high school, obviously you're big, you're strong, you're unbelievably athletic. But your first love was baseball, if I'm not mistaken, more so than football. Was a big part of your decision to go to USC, besides them being a power and they're nearby and all that kind of thing, but having the ability to play both when you went there?
That was part of the decision that came into my decision. You mentioned baseball. I started playing baseball when I was like 6, 7 years old. I wanted my name on my glove like Brooks Robinson because I was a third baseman. I idolized Juan Marichal as a big kid. I had the high leg kick as a pitcher. So those were the two guys that I wanted to be like. So my dream was to be a Major League Baseball player. And, so then fast forward to high school, started 3 years on the varsity, 3-time All-State, played 2 years of varsity football, only 2 years All-State. But still in high school, even though I continued to grow, 6'4" my sophomore year, 6'5" my junior year, 6'6", 290, 300 my senior year, baseball was still my first love, and still I was being very successful. So when I started to get recruited, I always wanted to go to USC. I just wanted to go there. But when they said you can play baseball, forget it. I always used that as a recruiting pitch, but I knew USC meant it because they had a track record of letting guys do that. And it was signed, sealed, and delivered once they said that.
And you had a chance to actually pitch for a team that won a national championship at USC. I'm talking about baseball now, not football.
Yeah, I did. In fact, my freshman year, I didn't get a chance to play baseball because I was rehabbing a knee. So my sophomore year in school was actually my freshman year of baseball. And we were loaded, Tom. I mean, our team was unbelievable. I played a few games on the JV, DH'd a little bit, then my arm got into shape, and he put me in the bullpen on the varsity. So most of the year I was on the varsity team. We went to Omaha. We just didn't win the World Series. I mean, it was like Michigan 8-0 in the top of the first, so we pitched the whole pitching staff. We beat Arizona State twice with Hubie Brooks and Rob Horner. We beat some pretty good teams. Just about everybody on our team got drafted. But, yeah, I was 1-out. One year I got to play baseball. I got myself a national championship ring. I think I pitched 11 innings that year. I did get one win, so I'm undefeated as a college pitcher. That was
hey, nothing wrong with that.
It was kind of mop-up at the end, We were in Texas for Easter, and we were going into Austin to play the University of Texas. And I think it was Eastern Michigan was there, and we had scheduled one game, and our starting pitcher took a line drive in the first inning. So coach put me in, and I pitched enough to get the win that game. But almost got a chance to pitch in the World Series. So I mentioned the Michigan game. We were up 8-0 in the top of the first inning. So what he didn't start the starter, which makes sense. But everybody on the staff pitched a half an inning. And there was myself and another freshman pitcher. We warmed up, and we ran out of innings. We thought we were going to get at least a half an inning. But the fact that I got to warm up in the World Series and just be there and win was unbelievable.
On the football side, you are it from the get-go there. Your junior year, you have this great season. Now comes your senior year at USC, and you get hurt in the season opener. You injure your knee. And I want to read a quote from Coach John Robinson, because what you did is you tore ligaments in your knee. You missed the rest of the regular season. You had the choice at the end of the year to come back and play in the Rose Bowl, which you did, and you beat undefeated Ohio State, or you could have taken a medical red shirt. You decided to come back and play in that game, wiped out your red shirt. John Robinson says, that's a perfect game. It's one of the greatest things I have ever seen happen or will ever see happen. Him coming back to play in that game. When you got injured in the season opener, and everybody knew that you were going to be a big high-round pick in the NFL, when you get injured that first game and you know it's going to be a long time before you're able to get out there again, can you remember what you were thinking about in terms of your future as a football player?
So I do. It was a long time ago. I'll never forget the day after surgery, Cedar-Sinai Hospital. That's back when they kept me in the hospital 2-3 days. I did a live hookup interview. And I'm sure most people know this name. Bryant Gumbel was an NBC sportscaster in LA. And he hooked up live. I'm in my bed at Cedar-Sinai. He's doing an interview. And the last thing he says, he goes, Anthony, this was my third knee operation, get it? A freshman, junior, late junior year, and then senior year. Bryant says, Anthony, when is enough enough? This is your third knee operation. When is it time to say, okay, let's move on? And I said, Bryant, I still have the passion and the desire to come back for one more chance. Thom, that one more chance was not the NFL draft, was not an NFL camp, was to play January 1st. We just come off a national chip my junior year in football also. Heisman Trophy winner Charles White. We were ranked number 1 when I got hurt in Lubbock, Texas, second time we had the football first game. I knew we would win the Pac-10 again and go to a Rose Bowl. So that one chance I talked about in that interview was rehabbing and playing in a Rose Bowl. We had played in 2 with the guys that I entered school with. We were all getting ready to finish school. That's why I didn't want to come back for a red shirt. I had enough school, didn't want to go to grad school. I wanted to play in a Rose Bowl with Charles White, Brad Buddy, Paul McDonald, Ronnie Lott, Dennis Smith, Joey Brown. I hadn't played in a Rose Bowl with these guys, and that was that one shot I wanted. So as soon as I got out of the hospital, Dee Dee and I had been married about 2 years. She thought I was a little crazy. I was jumping rope in my cast. I was lifting weights. I would go to class, go to rehab, lift weights, and then back to the apartment for homework. And she'll tell you now, she thought I was a little crazy. And maybe I had to be. And during the season, I staged with the team. Back then, I would wait, and guys, they get their tape job, and then right before the game, it's a little loose. I need to get spatted. I don't know if it's because your tape job's loose or it looks cool to get spatted. But I became like the official spatter for my guys. And I knew if I spatted them at SC, you couldn't have it white. You had to spray paint it black. So I carried my spray paint and the tape, but I stayed engaged. And I kept telling the guys, keep winning. I'm going to be with you January 1st. And they'd kind of look at me and say, okay, yeah, we get it. They're probably thinking this guy is delusional. He's had his third knee operation. But that was my whole focus, was to get ready to rehab. I'd been through 2 rehabilitations, so I knew what it took. And we won the Pac-10, and I had to convince John Robinson to let me start practicing. About a half an hour in his office. He didn't want to, and I understood the dilemma he was in. I mean, here's a guy that's had his third knee operation. I mean, is he coming back to? Finally, after about a half an hour, he said, Anthony, if you go to the doctor and he gives you an okay, I'll let you start practicing. Man, I flew to the doctor, and the doc said, there's no reason why you can't start practicing. Because I tested both legs. 2 surgeries on my right, this was on my left. By this time, December of that year, after 3 months from surgery, my left leg was now stronger than my right leg, and I was busting both of them. So I made every practice. Now, my conditioning during that whole time, I could get on a bicycle, and I felt like Lance Armstrong. I mean, I could bicycle all day long. So getting out to practice and running 110s after practice was a little hard at maybe the first 2 or 3 practices. But my cardio was there. I got my legs under me, and then it just kicked in. And I got to play I think I took 2 downs off during the game because I was almost hyperventilating. I was so excited. But we happened to have a pretty good freshman lineman in Bruce Matthews who came in.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I played the whole game. And I tell you what, Thom, to be on that team and to beat Ohio State and having to go 80-plus yards to win the game on the ground was just, the game of my life. And, to hear that quote from John Robinson, I can honestly say after looking back, in about 30 of the 50-some games I played, that was probably the best game I played at USC after missing the entire season. Not thinking about draft or anything. Like I said, I was thinking about January 1st, the granddaddy of them all, 82, 83 degrees, playing the number 1 team, and that was my thought. And I got a chance to do that.
Okay, so after that's over, now all of a sudden, I got to believe your attention swings to the potential of the draft. Okay, and I think your junior and senior years combined, so you played a total, if I'm not mistaken, of 15, 16 games, something in that neighborhood. So now teams are trying to decide, all right, what am I going to do? And for younger people out there, teams watching you, drafting you, scouting you, contacting you is so different than it is now. I mean, they poke and prod every part of your body, and probably in your case, to some extent, perhaps they did back then. Did you have any gut feeling, I guess, one, about Cincinnati, and two, that you would be a top 3 pick in the draft? Did you even see that coming as a possibility?
Had no clue. Before my senior year, they were talking top 5 pick. Once I got hurt, all the experts said he'd be lucky to go as a free agent. Maybe a late round pick, but probably a free agent. So my whole goal after that Rose Bowl was just to, and granted, I'm finishing up school, so I had class. I am going in the weight room, and I'm taking it to another level. I mean, I know guys go to Arizona, to Florida now. But look at who got us to where we were as seniors. Our strength and conditioning coach at your college, at your university. So all of us stayed there, and we just busted it with our strength coach. And I said, I've got to be as strong and as in the best shape I possibly can, so just in case they want to work me out, that I'm ready. But my whole goal was just to get to a camp. And it really didn't consist of being drafted. I didn't know if I was going to be drafted, but hopefully somebody would say, hey, we want to take a shot. We want to sign you as a free agent, come to our camp. I just wanted a chance to try to compete, see if I could compete on that level. And as far as the Cincinnati Bengals, they had just hired Forrest Gregg. They had the 3rd pick. And you're right. We had about 6 combines when I was coming out. Now they have the one in Indy. Mm-hmm. We had one like in Philly, New York, LA, Dallas. And all the guys would leave the physical and be there like an hour after everybody left. The doctors would check, recheck, put me through stuff. But the one thing that I kind of gave me a little bit of hope was the only team besides the physical that flew me in and worked me out were the Cincinnati Bengals. They flew me in after the physical, and their docs, again, just prodded and checked and strength trained. And then later that, after that, Forrest Gregg flew out to L.A. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness. If you're an offensive lineman in college and you don't know who Forrest Gregg is, you're nuts.
Yeah.
I knew he was all-pro guard tackle. I knew he was a Hall of Fame tackle. I knew that Vince Lombardi called him the finest player he had ever coached. And think about that, all the guys that Lombardi coached. And so he came out to work me out. So I got ready. I put my workout clothes on. We went on our practice field. And for about 2 hours, man, he put me – and Forrest was still in pretty good shape as a head coach at 19. He was probably maybe 40 years old, maybe not even that old, about 250. And he jogged every day. So, I mean, it was like he put me through just about every offensive line drill. And I said, here's my chance. And the story that I share, that is no exaggeration, and we got to share it 2 years after they drafted me. We went to the Super Bowl during media week. The last drill he put me through, and you have to understand, at USC with Hudson Houck, our offensive line coach, who coached 30 years in the NFL, we were using our hands, man. We were punching. That was kind of on the cutting edge. That's when it all started. And so Forrest says, I'm going to line up a defensive end, and I want you just to react. So he lines up. I'm in a left-handed stance. He's on the outside of me. He fakes outside. He goes inside, but then he goes to swat my outside shoulder. And when guys, defensive linemen, go to swat your outside shoulder, swat you, expose their chest. And our first reaction is to take both hands and just boom, right in the chest. And I did that, just instinct. And Thom, the first thing that hit the ground was the back of his head on the ground. And I'm thinking, oh man, my heart just dropped. I reached over to help him up, and I said, Coach, I am so sorry. And he looked at me in that Southern drawl, and he says, that's all right, son. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, maybe that just helped me out tremendously. And, of course, a couple months later, with the 3rd pick, they took me. So, but I had no clue other than that workout that maybe that was a sign. So when draft day rolled around and we got that call right away, because the 3rd pick of the draft, they're calling you right away.
Right.
And it happened, and I'm thinking, who is calling me? My relatives are calling me to see if I've been drafted. Got to get them off the phone because I might get a call. Sudden, the secretary says, Anthony Munoz. I said, yep. She goes, Cincinnati Bengals, can you hold for Jim McNally? And I'm like, oh, my goodness. I had met Jimmy in January. He had just been hired as a line coach. I had lunch with him and with Pete Brown. And he gets on the phone. He says, Anthony, you're our guy. We just taken you. And I'm like, I hang up the phone. I'm like, holy smokes. I look at Didi because we're in our one-bedroom apartment there at USC. 6'6", 300 pounds. I'm weeping by then, you know. And then I kind of composed myself. I said, Didi, we're going to Cincinnati. And Didi looks at me and goes, where's Cincinnati?
Of course, right.
I said, I don't care, but we're going there as a third pick.
When you get on that plane and you fly to Cincinnati with Didi and, they have the press conference to introduce you and all that kind of stuff, had you met Paul Brown yet? And you mentioned earlier about, if you're an offensive lineman growing up and in the time when you know who Forrest Gregg was and you probably shouldn't be playing football. Paul Brown was a little bit older. And obviously all his accomplishments, Hall of Famer, innovative, so on and so forth. What had you met him? And then if not, what was it like to meet him?
Well, I hadn't. I met all the others. You're meeting history. I didn't know everything about his history, but I knew he was football history. I mean, he was the man. And then all of a sudden you meet him, you play for him, and you realize what the guy brought to the game of football. I mean, you just mention it, face mask, playbook, videotaping practices, it's just – and Tom, here's the one thing. I tell people, like I said about Forrest Gregg, if you're a football fan, you love history, you have to know what Paul Brown brought to the game. I asked people, I said, how do the quarterback communicate with the coaches? And they said, well, they got these, transmitters, and I said, so think about this. I think it was in the late 1950s. Paul Brown tried to put a transmitter in his quarterback's helmet to communicate with them. I mean, that is crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They couldn't get it. And I laughed and I said, what, did he get too many radio stations while they were trying to communicate? But he tried that in the late 50s. I mean, it's face masks and playbooks. And so when I met him, it was just like meeting history. And then every year you're with him, it's like you learn more and more. And he shares more and more with you because he was very engaging. And, questions that he asked you led to stories. And it's like, all right, history lesson. But, so when I finally met him, it was like, wow, I get a chance to be around. And then you learn that he's there every single day. Installment, coming in after a game, on the plane. I mean, until he passed and got sick, he was there every single day, which is, amazing.
Yeah, an amazing guy, no question about it. Your second, you become a starter right away as a rookie. You got some good players on his team. A year later, you go to the Super Bowl. Look, everybody says going to a Super Bowl is their ultimate goal, or a World Series in baseball, or an NBA final, whatever it might be, right? But I always like to ask people, and I'm curious, the moment they maybe come out to warm up for a Super Bowl, maybe it's in your hotel room the night before a Super Bowl, maybe it's when they introduce your name, and that Super Bowl you played in was in Detroit that year at the Silverdome. Is there a moment for you that says, you look around and you're like, and knowing you and a man of faith, you're going, Lord, I can't believe I'm here. I'm playing in the Super Bowl. Was there ever a moment where it hit you?
Yeah, I guess the first one was in that cool game we played at Riverfront.
Yeah.
Like 59 below, you're sitting there and going, man, this is crazy playing it. But then you think about the winner goes to the Super Bowl. So it hits right after the last second, but it doesn't sink in. It hits, but it doesn't sink in. And then you have that whole week practicing at home, and the media, they come, not like it is now, but you get a lot of the media all week coming into Cincinnati, and then you go to the city. We went to Pontiac, Detroit, and I guess media day there. You're in the stadium, and they have you set all up in the stadium, and you just kind of are looking around, and you're thinking, man, this isn't a preseason media gathering. This is a Super Bowl, a pre-Super Bowl media day. You're actually in a, and I watched, back when I was growing up, I watched the Super Bowls, and of course the year before I got drafted, the Steelers beat the Rams in Pasadena, so I watched that. So 2 years in the league, I'm thinking, we're going to the Super Bowl. And a little different than my days at SC, because we go 6-10 my rookie year with the Bengals. And if you remember, prior to 80, they were 4-12 2 years in a row. So they got a lot of number one picks. Browner, Whitley, Edwards, Alexander, Thompson. I mean, there's a ton of number one picks because of how badly the team did. So my rookie year, we lose 10 games. I don't think I lost 10 games in 4 years of high school and college. So that was like, but you could see the team getting better. We had, out of those 10 losses, maybe half of them we could have won if we would have held on late in the game. And then, so there was some encouragement there. But then, going in that second year, 5-2, we go to New Orleans, 5-2, and we're having a pretty good start. But then they just spank us. I mean, they beat us good. We're 5-3. We get shellacked, and we get the heat from the press. But then that month of November, we go 5-0. And I'm telling, we don't only go 5-0. We have teams put away by mid to early third quarter. And then we start thinking playoffs, but not Super Bowl. So Super Bowl sinking in wasn't for a while. I mean, I'm like the week after the AFC, the week up in Detroit. That's when it starts to sink in, and you're like, you look around. And then pregame, you run out. And that's when, because usually you're home, they're all your fans. You're on the road, nobody's rooting for you. But you run out, and half the stadium's rooting for you, and half the stadium's the opposing team fans. So, there's a few things that all of a sudden you look around and say, wow, we're the only two teams playing. We're in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's hard to comprehend, but then it starts sinking in.
Over the next 7 years after that Super Bowl loss to the 49ers, you're a Pro Bowler every year. You end up in 11 of them. Every one of us has seen guys that have incredible success, and now success becomes more success and more success, not just in sports, in life, business, whatever it might be, right? And they start to lose an edge. I'll be the first guy in the world to admit I started at times in baseball to sort of lose mine a little bit despite all the success. Did you ever find yourself in a moment where you had to catch yourself and like, man, I got to get back to that guy who was getting ready to play in that Rose Bowl game after missing the entire year. I got to get back to that guy getting ready for the draft after playing in the Rose Bowl game. Did you ever have a crossroads, something like that, Anthony?
You know what, Tom? I can honestly, I really didn't, because my whole philosophy, even being the number 3 pick, when I first got here, I had to earn a job because I was young, high draft pick. And then you mentioned the Pro Bowls. And even though I was making the Pro Bowl, I'm getting closer to 30 years old. And in this league, closer you get to 30 years old, you're an old guy. So my whole philosophy was, I worked this hard when I was young. I got to work this much harder when I'm getting older. So I can honestly say that it wasn't until, I think, before that last year, and I always told myself, when I felt like I lived up in Mason early in my career, I told myself when I drive down 71 to go to practice and I feel like I'm going to work, that's when I believe it's time to retire. And that's when, and not one off season, not one regular season, even though we had some tough regular season, when I would hit Sycamore High School to run, man, at 23, 29, 30, I was probably in better cardio shape at 34 than I was in 24. In the weight room, of course, you're not as strong, you lose some, but busting in the weight room. So I can really say that the excitement of learning and hopefully getting better every year stayed there until that last year when I was driving down, and I said, I think this is going to be it. And I decided that this was going to be the last year because it did. It felt more like work than it did fun, games. From one-on-one pass pro to blitz pickup to even 9-on-7 run drill, as tough as it was fun for me because I knew we had 3-4 days of practice to get better in just one game. So practice was And I tell you what, I hated, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys, but I hated to get beat in practice. I hated to make a mistake. So that's what drove me to.
The second Super Bowl, you go from Ken Anderson as a quarterback in the first Super Bowl to Boomer Esiason, this flamboyant, outspoken, guy who now all of a sudden is a quarterback. I can't imagine that for an offensive lineman, and you were with a lot of that group for a number of years, and your buddy Max Montoya, among others, and Joe Walter, and right on down the road. I can't imagine you could have two very different guys as far as personalities are concerned, but were they all that different in the huddle when a game started?
A little bit. Still somewhat different. So they were different personality, similarities in probably two of the smartest quarterbacks that I've ever known. I mean, I look at these guys, quarterbacks that wear these big wristbands with all the formations and plays, and I just kind of chuckle because not even in today's game, I don't think Kenny Anderson or Boomer would have to wear those to be able to remember the plays. So in that sense, they knew the offense, they knew the defense, they knew what everybody had to. But even in the huddle, Boomer was a little more vocal. Kenny was more not as a different type of leader. Kenny was a man of few words, and when he said something, they were not loud words, but they were words that really stung, and from what I hear, I think Paul Brown was a lot like that, that he didn't rant and rave and scream and yell, but when he said something, you listened and took it to heart, and you didn't want to hear it again. And so I think that's in Boomer, and both guys, had your back. I mean, we might totally miss a guy, and he would hit the quarterback, and Boomer would say, "Hey, man, my bad. I'll get rid of the ball quicker next time." And, Kenny was the same way. They wouldn't throw the lineman under the bus. So, but, yeah, personality-wise, that's probably the big difference. But in the huddle, personality in the huddle, somewhat different, the way they handle things.
The story, and I was working at the NBC affiliate in Cincinnati at the time, my first job out of college. And they had asked me to go down to do a bunch of grunt work leading up to the Super Bowl in Miami. And then I fly back home for a day or two, and then the story hits about Stanley Wilson. And for those who don't remember, Stanley Wilson was an extremely talented running back. And I always found him to be a very pleasant guy. I mean, everybody's got their demons, and everybody's got their issues, and everybody's got, situations in their lives that they have to deal with. Each and every one of us is the same in that regard, some greater than others. But what do you recall about that day before the Super Bowl when all of that happened for you? I mean, here you're getting ready to play in the biggest game of your life. And now all of a sudden your heart's being torn out because you're worried about a teammate. Or maybe you're mad at a teammate.
Yeah. Mixed emotions. It's what are we, Super Bowl 57 coming up? And that's a couple years ago. And the memory is like it happened this past weekend. So we were down away from the crowd, away from the families, closer to the stadium. And our routine was dinner. Right after dinner, we had our meetings. And that night, we had dinner, and Sam says, "Hey, there's a Super Bowl special on. After dinner, go back to your rooms, watch the special. We'll meet right after it's over. We're in our meeting rooms." And, of course, you mentioned Stanley, probably one of the most charismatic guys I'd ever met. He had a couple falls during the season where he was suspended, but he'd come back, an amazing running back. And so we go to dinner, and we all go back to our rooms. And when you're part of a team and you spend so much time together and you build that bond, words don't have spoken when you know there's something wrong. So we all gather back at the meeting room after the special, and you could just feel the room that there's something wrong. No coaches in there, just all the players, and everybody's kind of, what's going on. I'm sure some guys knew but weren't saying anything. And then as soon as Sam walked in, you knew that something was wrong. Didn't know exactly what was wrong, but then he proceeded to tell us exactly what happened and where they found Stanley and what he was doing. And like I said, a variety of emotions. So the first one for me was, here it is, a guy, his life is messed up again. I'm not thinking biggest game of your career yet. I'm thinking, here's a guy that is just, man, let this demon, let this disease, let this drug get him again. So that's the first thought. And then all of a sudden the other emotions. I mean, our career, we need the guy. He's let us down, but then it's, okay, we got to go out, next guy up. We got to, so your mind is racing and going from, just feeling sorry for the guy to angry to now we got to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. We got to get over this. But it's tough because it's like a bomb just hit us the night before the game. I mean, the emotional, he's a brother, man. He's a family member. And this happens again, and it's just like, you just feel terrible. And it was tough going. I mean, that night before, then you got to meet and you got to finalize your game plan, and then you got all day the next day to sit around because the game's at night and think about the game, and then think about what happened to Stanley, where is he now, what's going to happen to Stanley. So that was a big blow.
You got a big blow in the game too. All of a sudden they're down the stretch. I still think one of the coolest stories, and had the Bengals won that game, I think it would go down in Super Bowl lore, because I was mentioned working at Channel 5, and I had flown back to Miami the day before the game when the Stanley Wilson stuff happens, and Stanford Jennings' wife had a child in the hospital, and Sam had contacted us at Channel 5 and said, could you just get us a piece of video of his wife holding their brand new little baby? He's with a team down there, and can you get that video down there? So we got it down there. And then he runs back a kickoff for return for it. I just thought it was that was an amazing moment. But when Montana goes down the field, you guys have the lead, out he trots. Most of the time you'll see the offense and the offensive linemen sitting down on the bench together, going over something in case something comes up and you got to get out there one more time. What were you doing exactly when that drive starts and then when it culminates with the touchdown to John Taylor at the end?
You're right. You do have that. We did get on the bench right away. You make your adjustments. And we as offensive linemen always enjoy getting on the op end of where our defense was, and we'd take a knee and just watch our defense. And that's what we did. And, 92 yards, 3 minutes, we're thinking, the defense has given a lot of yards, but they haven't given up the points, and felt pretty good about it. And so I was just on a knee watching, and then watching, and then watching. And then I guess the one play that really, really brought a lot of concern before all, was I think they had like a 3rd and 16, and Montana hits Rice. He breaks the tackle, and he gains like 17 or 18. So they get and man, we hold them on that, and we take over, and there's not, I mean, really, that's the one point where we could have really closed the door. But when he got that first down, then I think I went from a knee to standing up and watching, and it's like, come on, you're just rooting for the pass rushers now. I mean, you know that because you face pass rushers late in the game, and you know that it's exhausting for them to play after play to rush the passer, and you're just rooting for the Jason Bucks and the David Grants and and those guys to get after it and get Montana, and it doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden, I think Jerry Rice might have had over 200 yards that game, and John Taylor makes one catch in the entire game, and it's with 34 seconds left, and he catches a touchdown from Montana. I mean, the guy hadn't caught the ball all game. So it goes from, okay, feeling pretty good, and then they break and they make that first down to, oh no, we got to stop them, or else we're not going to have enough time. So once again, you go from feeling good to not feeling. But it goes from the knee, helmet on the ground, to standing up. You put your helmet, and you're kind of going through and just thinking, man, if I could only be a Bruce Smith and pass rush, I'd put me in there and I could get to it. But you feel helpless.
Before we get out of here, many people who are watching today are well aware of the Anthony Munoz Foundation, which you and Dee Dee started, I think it was 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So you guys have just celebrated 20 years as an anniversary of this foundation, and the millions of dollars that you have helped children spiritually, physically, mentally, helping them to get a chance to go to college. You got married so young in college. When you try to put things all in perspective at the end of the day, 11 Pro Bowls, Hall of Fame, 75th All Anniversary, 100th Anniversary, all those things. Is anything more important besides your faith in that foundation when all is said and done?
Now, faith is number one. Like I tell people, I mean, that's everything. My relationship with Jesus, and that to me is number one. Family, and then the opportunity to give back. I think about, the foundation. I think about those. Think about mom. Think about teachers and coaches that poured into my life and kept me pretty much thinking in the right direction. Poured into my life when we didn't have any money to get me a baseball glove or a chance to play baseball, even though we win a championship when I'm 9 years old and all the parents are demanding my birth certificate. But it was those coaches that stood by me and encouraged me. And the scholarship I got to USC and the encouragement I got from my coaches and teachers in high school, believing that I could get it done on the next level. My coaches on USC and my coaches in the pro. So it's, at first, when I first started the foundation, and it wasn't until 8 years after I retired, and I understand the leverage and the relevance you have as a player, but as a husband, father, and a member of the Bengals, I didn't have enough time to be engaged in the foundation. Because when I put my name on something, I want to be totally engaged. I want to be part of the impact. So I was. So when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about giving back, paying it forward. But then as I get older, it becomes honoring those through the foundation that poured into my life, that made it possible for me to believe in myself and utilize the gifts that God gave me and develop those and to move through and be able to overcome adversity in college and injuries and, the injuries I had in the pros and just a lot of the, like you said earlier, none of us are exempt from craziness in our families. I mean, we all go through crazy things. None of us, go unscathed, without any problems. But so that's what my faith in the foundation has been for our families, that they've supported me, they've encouraged me, and they've been part of it, that we can help young men and women through our 8 programs. Is when we started we're moving into our 21st years, that, to engage the tri-state area to impact youth mentally, physically, and spiritually with our 8 programs, that we have built a team. And my name's on it, but I know it's all about team, just like it was with, high school and in the pros. It's about the team and having an impact, with our staff, with our volunteers, with our board members, or, the corporate partners. And we have a humongous team that impacts young people. And to me, that's what it's all about, is being able to say to a young person, hey, your mom OD'd, your dad's incarcerated, you're a 4.2 in high school, you have it tough. Let us assist you in college and let us pay for some of your college. Or, our leadership program, bringing, 1,500 students to a one-day event and having speakers that are going to give them some leadership nuggets that they can take back on their campus in the community to their families. They're going to help them in life. Or our mentoring program that's teaching, K through 5 elementary kids, make sure they're up on their reading, that they don't fall behind. That they, with their homework, and then also building relationships with them. Or our overnight character camps, taking 150 young men away for 3 days, middle school young men, teaching them a little football, but having chapel and character traits, having team building exercises, and sharing with them. It doesn't matter what you look like. We might look different, but we got to work together. We got to respect each other. We've been doing that for 20, 30 years. So all our 8 programs that we run, our 2 scholarship funds, and just being able to say, hey, and they thank us, and I always say, don't thank us. We're just here to recognize and help you out. You're the one that's doing all the work. We thank you for allowing us to help you out, because you're busting your tail. And so that's, to me, when it's all said and done, those are the things that I get excited about.
Well, Anthony, I can't thank you enough for your time. I kept you a little longer than I told you I would. You've always just been a great friend, and I was privileged to work alongside of you and travel with you for well over a year, and doing football games together, and just seeing everything and knowing everything that you've done here in our great city, in our great area. I know I speak for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, around here in greater Cincinnati, to you and Dee Dee and Michael, and to Michelle and all your grandkids, we just say thank you, and we're lucky to have you here with us. Thanks for your time today, my friend.
Thom, always a pleasure. You know, it seems like it was yesterday, but it's been a few years since we worked together, and I loved it. We had fun. Maybe we can do it again and talk about some of the stories we had on the road.
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I mean, the only time I've ever seen you get mad was when we were with Buddy Ryan, and Buddy was sitting there trying to tell us how his defense shut down that no-huddle nonsense, and you made the comment, jumped right up and said, well, something to the effect of, the last time we played one of your defenses, I was on the bench in the third quarter. Something like that.
You remember his response? He goes, I took over the defense after that game. I was the defense. And if you remember, he had 6 hats in his hand to give to somebody else. And you guys, hey, you got him mad. Those hats were for us.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Anytime we can do this, and it's always great seeing you. Always great being with you. I appreciate your friendship, and this has been fantastic.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for your time. All the best. Anthony Munoz. You know, I didn't want to keep him. I told him I wouldn't keep him any longer. I didn't even get a chance to ask him about the Bengals this week. He does their preseason games on television, and he has great insight, and I dropped the ball, and shame on me. I just think there's so much more to the man and the person, Anthony Munoz, than just talking about football. But maybe we'll have him back. And once the Bengals season gets going and we can talk about Jonah Williams, I'd be interested to hear his thoughts on how that young man, first-round pick a couple of years ago out of Alabama, how he's coming along as their starting left tackle. They revamped the offensive line. I was very surprised. I can't remember where it was. I don't know if it was at the Athletic website or somewhere else. In some kind of season preview where there was some, and there's always one, right? There's always one, and there should always be one, but there's always one. NFL executive, nameless, of course. You know, why can't you ever just put your name to something? If you got something to say, put your name to it. But that's a different rant for a different time. But some executive in the NFL had made the comment that he doesn't think the Bengals' offensive line is very good this year. I mean, maybe he's right. I have no idea. But the Browns have gone out and spent a lot of money. They realized the biggest weakness on that team last year of a team that got to the Super Bowl was that offensive line, and they bring in 3 new guys to start. They've got a 4th new starter because of the rookie winning the guard position. And then they have Williams coming back at tackle. So anyway, all right. The NFL season kicks off tomorrow night, and that is going to be the Buffalo Bills and the defending Super Bowl champion LA Rams. So today we're going to get some inside information from Ryan Dyrup, who covers everything that is California, Los Angeles football. We'll talk to him. And then tomorrow, I'm really excited because I loved watching this guy play for the Buffalo Bills. Big old Reuben Brown. I remember Chris Collinsworth saying that when he was like a rookie or second year in the league. That big old Reuben Brown over there in Buffalo when the Bengals had great rivalries with the Bills. But he's going to join us tomorrow to bring us a Buffalo perspective. Many feel like the Bills and the Rams season opener. It could also be the last game we see in football this year at the Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. So he is still coming up. My dad, Marty Brennaman, is coming up, although we taped him yesterday, and his internet's brutal. I don't know what else to say. He's up next. Or are we going to take a break, come back, talk about a couple things, and then we'll get to Marty Brennaman. Stick around. You're watching Off the Bench, presented by UDF.
The time is now. Football season is back here in the Queen City, and Week 1, St. X versus Dakota West. DJ Train here with Chatterbox. It's about to go down. It's our kickoff of our official tour. Every Friday night you'll see us. Let's go. It's on 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
game, bro?
My first one. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better first one because Coda West struggling a lot throughout the first half and beginning of second half, and then
Big time.
it's a party.
I know one thing. Ain't nobody does this better than us. Facts.
Yeah, this atmosphere was insane. Show was on point. Everybody had a great time for the first one too, bringing people together. Big shout out to everybody tonight that worked hard from Chatterbox and everywhere else to put on a great show.
This dude's legit.
And he's sweating, so you know he's legit.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, presented by UDF, our friends at United Dairy Farmers. We are taping this segment today. That we're taping it is Tuesday, and you're watching it right now on Wednesday, because our next guest, a regular and friend of the program, has a big day on Wednesday, introducing all of the groups that are going to be playing in the Pro-Am at the Kroger Classic out at Kenwood Country Club. So, Marty Brennaman, congratulations. What an honor that is. Is anybody helping you with name pronunciations, all that kind of thing? Because, you know, whether it be people you don't know in the business community here in town, or whether it's some of the players out there that maybe you're not familiar with, or are you ready to go on that front?
Well, I'm going to be ready to go by the time the ball goes here at 12:30 tomorrow, or today as we talk on this program. We have an extensive opportunity to check the names out. So many young women that play in this event, as you well know, are Asian women, and so a lot of them are nailed down, and I hope to be able to do that by 12:30 tomorrow. Otherwise, today I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm trying to pattern myself off the guy who does the British Open every year. I mean, this guy has developed a career unto itself by doing every major event that comes out of the British Isles. He sounds very dignified, and people have accused me of being dignified in my life, that I feel like I will simply be what he does over at St. Andrews or Turnberry or one of the they play in Scotland. So I'm going to be on top of my game.
Are those your dogs barking in the background?
That would be a singular dog, Tom. That would be Wog. And that would be Millie, who runs this household.
Okay. Does Millie like when you go on shows like this, or when you're getting interviewed on different things, wants to get a little extra attention by barking while it's going on?
Well, she wants attention bubbing her while I'm doing the program, whether it be with you or with somebody else. And now I'm upstairs to check to see who just walked by the house, because anytime there's movement, she's at the front door. She is the ultimate guard dog of any guard dogs I've, no matter what make or model they might be. She's as good as it gets.
And she weighs about, you're one of those guys that has one of those little dogs. I remember my wife and I were in Chicago one day back when you and I were both still doing the Reds games, and we're sitting at some
You're
little corner.
You're going to bring this up now, aren't you?
Well, I am, because, this happened. It's not like it didn't happen, and a lot of other people saw you. So, but we were sitting there at like some little corner bakery thing, having a cup of coffee and a bagel or whatever, and all of a sudden, I see you from like a block down the street pushing a baby stroller. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe
Correct.
He's got a friend in town who maybe Marty's in town, good old Uncle Marty, and babysitting a little bit and, pushing the baby around, get a little fresh air. And then lo and behold, the
Correct.
closer you got, and actually you were pushing around one of your dogs.
I was not pushing around one of my dogs. We only have one dog. That's one. We have one dog. That's Millie, that Amanda went out to California to get one year in spring training, and she runs the house. And we had this baby carriage, and somebody said to me, "You're not serious, are you?" And I think it might have been our good friend Jim Day.
Yeah.
You're not take that dog carriage and roll it down Michigan Avenue. I said, I have every intention in the world of doing that. He said, you're going to open yourself up to a lot of heat. I said, well, I learned a long time ago that if you're going to got to be able to take it. So we have a picture of me strolling her down Michigan Avenue and flexed unbelievably unconscionable looks that people were giving.
Yeah, well,
I handle it.
I know you did. I was one of them, and I was still in shock when I saw it. Even now, I'm somewhat traumatized by that whole thing.
I'm sure you are.
You are a big football fan. Now, at the Brennaman household, are you and Amanda dialed into college football like all day this past Saturday, where UC's playing in the afternoon and Ohio State is playing later that night? North Carolina, your alma mater, had a wild game a few days ago against App State. Are you watching a lot of that stuff?
I did my butt from 12 noon until the Ohio State game ended. I watched all three of them in their entirety. I really get up for football on Saturday, college football. In fact, I like college football better than I like ball. I'm a Bengals fan, but after that, and then Washington. I still Redskins. I know people properly, politically correct. It's Commanders. Always ends for me. And so, yeah, the schedule worked well with Carolina kicking off at noon, and then UC at 3:30, and then the Ohio Notre Dame 7:30. So I was in hog heaven.
This Sunday, will you be dialed into the Bengals game with rooting interest?
Big time, yes, yeah, no question about it. I'm a big Joe Burrow fan. I'm a big Zach Taylor fan. It took me a long time to make that admission because I didn't think Zach Taylor could coach his way out of a wet paper bag. But he made a believer out of me last year, so I'm now a fan. I'm a Joe Mixon. I'm a fan of Sam Hubbard. I'm a fan of those young receivers that Joe Burrow has to throw at every Sunday or whenever they play. So you're going to be glued to the TV and watch it from kickoff until end. Correct.
Okay. I only bring this up because there was a time when you had one of your moments where you sort of went off the rails a little bit on Mike Brown. And
a moment.
Okay, well, a number of moments. And you went off the rails on him a little bit. And then, for those who don't know the story, please fill them in on what happened subsequently when we had a chance to go down there and actually break bread, you and me, with Mike and Katie Blackburn.
Yeah. Well, he and I had never met before. We'd both been in Cincinnati forever. Mike, obviously, longer than I'd been. At the same time, this is a big, small town. So you got to figure at that time, it was like 38, 39, 40 years, you're going to run into accidentally. But we never had. So I was asked to MC an event at Purcell Marion High School in which Roger Staubach was coming into town from his home in Texas. He was a graduate of Marion. He was going to address the student body in the gym about miniature rubberized footballs and sign autographs. Would I do it? I said yes. Over there, and just moments before the event started, somebody said Mike Brown's going to show up today. And there were other people said, oh, he really doesn't come to events like this. And so lo and behold, just moment the thing started, Mike walked in with young Paul. And so note of that. But the event began. Now it ends. Now Staubach is throwing these foot to the kids. And I'm standing on the periphery of this whole thing. And all of a sudden, I sensed somebody next to me. And I turned around. It was Mike Brown. And he stuck his hand out. He said, hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm Mike Brown. I shook his hand. I said, I know who you are. And he meant to me that, that there was very few, if anybody, in town over the years of the meeting more critical, openly critical of him as the owner of the Bengals than I was. And I said, I'm well aware. And he said, we need to get to know each other. So fast forward, we had that luncheon that day. And as you said, it was you and me and Mike and his daughter and her son, Troy. And told by Paul Doherty before the luncheon, he said, now, let me prepare you for something. You spend time with him in a social situation. You have a hard time differentiating between Mike Brown, the owner, and Mike Brown, the person. And he said, because really a likable guy. And he was right. Very difficult for me after that luncheon to be publicly critical of the way he ran the team, because I thought he was a damn nice guy. He told great stories about his dad. I thought it was a very nice luncheon. His daughter, on the other hand, would just as soon as her arm off than be in the same room with me, because she held me accountable so about some of the negative things I'd said about her dad over the years, and I did them on the radio. Of course, of a Reds game, something would come up, I'd say, oh, here we go again, you know. And I had a lunch with him the following year, and I don't know what, all of a sudden they disappeared, these luncheons with Mike Brown, and I so look forward to him, because I thought the guy was an interesting guy to talk to. All of a sudden, I became persona non grata, never heard from him again. And I don't think I said anything to that. I don't think I pissed him off later after the luncheon that he had with me, because all of a sudden I got to know Mike Brown personally a little bit and really liked him.
Yeah, but you know, you can, though, I think you'll be the first to admit, though, you can find a way to piss some people off.
Well, Katie was really pissed off. Katie did not like being with me at all. I mean, the hair stood up on the back of my neck when I was sitting across from me with somebody that if she could legitimately get away with murdering me, she would have. Obviously, she couldn't. Troy, being a Duke guy, was a little bit more tempered in his outward appearance toward me, but it was still a reminiscence. It was a memorable day because of the fact that I got to know him, albeit, and very sadly, became very short-lived, because after the second luncheon, he said, to hell with this, I'm not having lunch with him anymore. It's the way it went.
Well, we'll see if we can't make something happen and put that together again. But the first thing we got to do is get you some cord for this this dial-up service you have in your house if you're going to be on every week. I mean, Tracy Jones called it.
To talk about. I don't have a dial-up service in my house.
Well,
are you kidding me?
It might not be that good as a dial-up service, truth be told, right? All right. Dad, thanks for the time. Great having you with us. We'll check back with you next week.
Already?
I mean, that's it. You know, yeah, we have two Hall of Famers on the show today. We have you, and after we take this commercial break, we have Anthony Munoz.
Well, I couldn't precede a human being on the face of God's earth than Anthony Munoz. So I feel like I'm honored, and you be sure and tell him that nobody is a bigger fan of him. I'm not so sure about this damn cord you want to get me, and now it's going to pray to try and figure out what this is all about. I have no idea.
Nobody praying more than I do. I can promise you.
Tell all the boys I said hello.
I will. We all say hey, and good luck at the golf tournament, and have fun over the weekend.
I'll let you know.
All right. Marty Brennaman, the Hall of Famer, kind enough to join us as he does each and every week. I'm telling you, that is got to be – I'm not even sure it's a dial-up service. You know, he all that money he's made all these years, and to think that we can't get a better connection than that. And that base – believe me, where he's doing this show down in his basement – his wife, Amanda, redid that thing for him a couple of years ago. That thing is as sweet a setup as you have ever seen in your life. If there is such a thing as the ultimate man cave to just go watch a sporting event, that room he has in his basement, the whole floor, not a room, the whole floor is decked out top to bottom. He didn't know she was doing it. There's got to be, I'm not exaggerating, there's got to be 300 or 400 pictures of everybody, my dad with Pete Rose, to Harry Carey, to Vin Scully, to his family, to Julius Erving, who, I mean, it's insane. Anyway, we thank him for joining us. All right, The Hall of Famer, as mentioned, Anthony Munoz, is part of our big interview this week, and that's coming up right around the corner. You're watching Off the Bench, presented by UDF.
The time is now. Football season is back here in the Queen City, and Week 1, St. X versus Dakota West. DJ trained here with Chatterbox. It's about to go down. It's our kickoff of our official tour. Every Friday night you'll see us. Let's go.
Here's our 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
Man, I'm telling you, this game is going to come down to the first guy that says I've had enough. That's all it's going to say. One guy to say, you know what, I've had enough.
First game, bro.
My first one. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better first one because Dakota West struggling a lot throughout the first half and beginning of second half, and then
Big time.
it's a party, it's a party, it's a party.
I know one thing. Ain't nobody does this better than us. Facts.
Yeah, this atmosphere was insane. Show was on point. Everybody had a great time for the first one, too. Bringing people together. Big shout out to everybody tonight that worked hard from Chatterbox and everywhere else to put on a great show.
This dude's legit.
And he's sweating, so you know he's legit.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Steelers Week, and this is our Bengals report, provided by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing models to improve efficiency and productivity. Visit encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. Okay. Game coming up Sunday, 1 o'clock right here in Cincinnati. Steelers v. Bengals. Zach Taylor was asked yesterday about Joe Burrow, this brand new offensive line, and here we go in week 1. Zach Taylor.
It helps you sleep better at night when you have Joe Burrow playing quarterback for you. I can promise you that. And so, again, because there's always unknowns, there's always the excitement that comes with a game, and did we do everything we could to help our players? But when you got really good players also, that makes it a little bit easier to sleep. At the same time, they're still, you want to make sure you're utilizing them the right way. You're putting them in the best position to hit their full potential. And so those are still the things that we think a lot about, spend a lot of time making sure that we're doing our best to put some really good players in position to be the most successful they can.
Offense is going to be fun to watch. I can't wait to see how this whole new offensive line plays out. We've talked a lot about it. They did not play in the preseason together, not a single snap. Not one starter, period, on offense or defense. And now you're going up against the Steelers. Watt, Cameron Hayward. Hayward's the second best defensive tackle in the NFL after Aaron Donald. So we'll see. Meanwhile, we brought up earlier Mike Tomlin. Great coach. I mean, great coach. Decided Mitchell Trubisky is a guy. I'm sure, not living in Pittsburgh, we're not there every day knowing what's going on. They bring in Trubisky from Buffalo, backed up Josh Allen, as we talked about earlier last year after being a starter in Chicago. Kenny Pickett was drafted this year out of Pitt. And, in fact, if you've never been there, Pitt trains at the same place basically where the Steelers train. He's just going to a different parking lot. And I'm sure there were a lot of people around there that really wanted Pickett to be the starter, but it's Trubisky. And here's Mike Tomlin on Mitchell Trubisky.
Man, we're just really comfortable with what Mitch has shown us. He's a guy that came to us with franchise quarterback experience, if you will. He's comfortable in those shoes. He's been the focal point of a football team in an organization before. He's had success in doing so. Like I mentioned when we acquired him, he took the Bears to the playoffs 2 out of 4 years. He has a winning record as a starting quarterback. Those things were attractive to us. His athleticism and mobility were attractive to us. He took care of the football in stadium. All our quarterbacks did, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. It's good to come to decisions based on what people are doing as opposed to what people are not doing. I thought all 3 of our quarterbacks represented themselves and us really well through this process. I thought they made plays. I thought they moved their units. I thought they took care of the football. So that made the decision-making a challenging one, but also a fun one as well.
So those were the comments made by Steeler head coach Mike Tomlin. And you know he'll have them ready to go. Now, I want to check in. You guys have been here an hour and a half already. Casey McAllister and Brandon Seho are producers. You guys okay today? I see you still haven't gotten to work on that backdrop.
You know,
this is almost as tired as my dad's internet connection.
Who's going to get
almost? Who's
going to get it done first? Your dad's internet from dial-up, or we're going to have something behind us?
Or of those two, which happens first, or the third being this show gets canceled? Because his internet is tired and your guy's background is tired.
Listen, we got a Steve Logan jersey coming right here.
Steve Logan? You see?
Yeah, Steve Logan. He used to call his games.
One of the all-time great players at UC, and no young man has been led more astray by an agent of any player I have ever seen in any sport than he was coming out of UC. We'll save that for another day. Hey, listen. What is this thing I read about sent out by Game Day Productions today, Brandon Seho, where you were a part of some, I guess, Madden simulator, right, of the Bengals Steelers? Walk me through that. What happened? What's this all about?
So each week we are going to do me and our buddy Zim Houday.
Yeah, Zim Houday.
Zim Houday. He's
on
got a lot
tomorrow.
of energy. I'm trying to match his energy, which is impossible.
The man.
I'll do play-by-play. He does more of the color commentary of the Madden simulation of the Bengals' upcoming game each week. So 6 o'clock, we'll have Madden Tuesdays on Twitch TV/Cincy Fear. Cincy Fear is the local esports major league team, so Cincinnati's 4th major league team. We're doing it remote right now, hoping to get out to location so fans can come join us, maybe do some giveaways, meet us, do the call there live. But in this one, Steelers went up 14-0 right out of the gate. Burrow threw a pick 6. Bengals defense helped him get back in with 3 picks, ended up winning a thriller 47-44 off a 52-yarder from Money Mack at the buzzer. That's a lot of points.
47-44? Yep. Casey, do you have any idea what the over-under is on that game? Does anybody have any idea? Pull that up.
There's no way it's that many points.
Well, heck, no, there's no chance of that. Let's
see. Here we are. Bengals, Steelers.
I mean, my math is not very good, but that's 91 points.
44.5 is the over-under. That's what one team's – the Bengals beat that in the Madden simulation.
So do you do this? I was trying to look at something here for our next guest. Did you play the simulation game just one time, multiple times, what?
It just gets played out one time.
One time, and
we see it blind, and then call the game.
Okay.
I could see like 27-24, not 47-44.
No, I'm with you on that all the way. And again, for those of you, this Friday we'll have our regular college picks, right? We'll find a handful of games. We will have a handful of pro games, and every week we'll be picking the Bengals and the other teams in the AFC North. And so that's coming up. And we're picking our playoff teams for this coming season, including the matchup in the AFC and NFC championship games, as well as the Super Bowl, which will be played in Glendale, Arizona. As you know, last year's Super Bowl was played in L.A. Second year in a row where the hometown team won the Super Bowl in their primary and exclusive venue. Tampa Bay did it 2 years ago. The Rams in L.A. last year. And the man who's dialed into all things as far as L.A. football is concerned is joining us right now, Ryan Dyrup. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. It's bright and early out your way. How's everything out in Southern California?
Well, I'm sure you heard, but it's hot. Nice
yes.
and hot. It was 85 when I left the house at about 7 a.m. But things are good. Can't complain. Football starts tomorrow. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Hey, let me ask you a question real quick about that, about the Heat. I was stunned because I was a part of the Arizona Diamondbacks baseball franchise 2 years before the team started playing, and we're building the first ever retractable dome stadium with a natural grass field. They build this incredible dome that costs to the tune of $5 billion out there in L.A. And did I read right yesterday there's no air conditioning in that building?
It's mostly natural because it's still open on the sides.
Yeah.
So they do pump some AC, though. I mean, there's definitely air flow that goes in there.
Okay.
So tomorrow should not be a 110-degree kickoff, I wouldn't think.
I wouldn't think so either. So let's talk about the Rams a little bit. The team that beat the Bengals, obviously, in the Super Bowl last year. Great game. And for a lot of us who have covered Matthew Stafford for a long, long time, even if you didn't like Stafford because maybe he played for the Lions all those years and you were a Packer or Vikings or Bears fan or whatever, I don't know how you couldn't be happy for the guy. He's first class, first rate, top shelf. Now, there have been concerns, Ryan, about his elbow. He says he's okay. Are you believing he's okay?
Well, it's unfortunate because it feels a lot like the Todd Gurley situation a few years ago where Todd would say he was okay, he'd tell the media he's okay, Sean McVay would say he's okay, but then everyone knows how that story goes. The usage wasn't there. He ended up not even playing much in the playoffs, had to go sign C.J. Anderson off the streets. So I don't think it's that level of concern with Matthew Stafford, but there's something there. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of uneasiness about his elbow and what could be, and I don't know if he'll be on a quote-unquote snap count throughout the each games and seasons, and obviously maybe we'll get to it later, but one of the big kind of talks that we've been talking about a lot about this team is the running game and whether these running backs can stay healthy, because obviously if that's a big thing, then that's going to take the pressure off the Stafford so he doesn't have to throw it 40-plus times a game. But, to put it lightly to answer your question, there's definitely some concern. I think, though, he will be okay. He says he's okay. He just signed that big extension, 5-year contract extension, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. So the team, I would assume, did their due diligence going into that contract. But definitely it's something we'll be monitoring all year long, and I'm sure it'll get talked about every single week heading into the game, especially if his performance slips or he underthrows any balls. I'm sure that'll be the first thing that comes up.
Well, Ryan, talk about the running back situation, because I was going down that road along with the offensive line. We'll get to the offensive line in a minute. But what about the running backs room?
So I've been predicting throughout the offseason that Kyren Williams will be RB1, by week 2 or so. Unfortunately, that was maybe delayed a little bit when he broke his foot in OTAs in non-contact and kind of added to the mystique of this room that they cannot stay healthy. Obviously everyone knows Cam Akers with the Achilles tear last year made that miraculous comeback in the playoffs, but clearly didn't look like himself. And so hopefully now with an offseason really nursing that, he will look like they thought he was going to look when they drafted him out of Florida State. Darrell Henderson, unfortunately, the explosive back out of Memphis, just can't stay on the field his entire career. Even when he hasn't missed games, he missed snaps every single game. He'll go in for a few snaps here and there, and then he'll miss 10 plays straight.